there is something that happens to millions of women every single night, something that no one warned them about, something that their doctors often dismiss with a sympathetic nod and a prescription pad. They wake up at 2 in the morning, then again at 4, sometimes 5 times before the alarm goes off. And every single time, it is the same thing. That sudden, impossible to ignore urgency, that rush to the bathroom in the dark, that feeling that their own body has become unpredictable, unreliable, something to be managed rather than trusted. And almost every single one of those women has been told the same thing. They have been told this is just part of getting older, that this is normal, that they should expect this. I am here to tell you today that what you have been told is dangerously incomplete. And I am going to show you something in this video that most women in your situation have never seen before. Something that changes everything. But first, I need you to stay with me for the next few minutes, because what I am about to reveal is not what you expect. And if you leave before I get there, you will miss the part that actually matters. My name is Dr. Eleanor Whitaker. I have spent over 2 decades working with women navigating the hormonal transitions of perimenopause and menopause, and I have seen something in my practice that I could not ignore. The women who struggle most with nighttime urgency, with unexpected leaks, with that constant background anxiety about their bladder, are almost never struggling because of their bladder. The bladder is not the origin of this problem. It is the messenger. And until you understand what message it is actually sending, nothing you do at the surface level will fully work. I am going to explain the real origin in just a moment. But before I do, I want to ask you something honest. When did you stop trusting your own body? Because I think if you trace it back, it started quietly. One night of interrupted sleep became 2. 2 became a pattern. And somewhere along the way, you stopped expecting a full night of rest. You started planning around restrooms. You started choosing seats near exits. You started saying no to things you used to say yes to. And you told yourself it was just age. I want to gently challenge that story today. Here is what I need you to understand before I reveal anything else. And this is the part that creates the foundation for everything that follows. Your bladder, your urethra, your pelvic floor muscles, and the nerves that coordinate all of them. Every single one of these structures has receptors for one specific hormone, a hormone that most people think of only in terms of reproduction, a hormone whose role in bladder function is almost never discussed in a routine doctor's appointment. I am going to name that hormone in just a moment. And when I do, and when I explain what happens to these tissues when levels of that hormone begin to fall, something is going to click for you. A pattern you may have been living with for years is going to suddenly make sense. So stay with me. We are almost there. The hormone is estrogen, and what I am about to tell you about estrogen. And the bladder is something that most conventional medicine glosses over entirely. Estrogen does not just regulate your cycle. Estrogen is what keeps the lining of your bladder healthy, thick, and resilient. It is what maintains the elasticity of your urethra. It is what keeps the nerves of your pelvic floor calibrated and responsive rather than reactive and hypersensitive. When estrogen levels begin declining, which typically starts in a woman's late 30s and accelerates dramatically through perimenopause and menopause, all of these tissues begin to change at the same time. They thin. They lose elasticity. The nerves become more reactive, sending urgency signals even when the bladder is only partially full. The muscles that once held everything firmly begin to lose their tone and their responsiveness. This is why the bladder becomes what researchers now call overactive. Not because something is wrong with the bladder, but because the hormonal environment that kept it functioning properly has shifted. Your bladder is responding to a change in its environment, and it is doing the only thing it knows how to do. It is sending a signal. Now here is where it gets interesting. And this is where I am going to begin to tell you about something I discovered that I have been sharing with patients for years, something that most women in your situation have never tried because it addresses the problem at the level where the problem actually lives. But before I get to that, I need to explain one more piece of the picture, because without this piece, the solution will not fully make sense. There is a specific process that happens in the body at night, a hormonal regulation that is supposed to reduce urine production during sleep to allow the kidneys to slow down so that your bladder stays quiet and your body can rest. This process depends on the right hormonal environment to function properly. When that environment changes, when estrogen falls, this nighttime regulation becomes less effective. The kidneys continue producing urine at nearly the same rate around the clock. The bladder, now with thinner lining and more reactive nerves, interprets even moderate fullness as urgent, and the muscles that are supposed to hold back that urgency, now less toned and less responsive, struggle to comply. The result is what you know: the waking, the rushing, the exhaustion that accumulates night after night after night into a kind of fatigue that sleep itself no longer seems to resolve. I have sat with hundreds of women who described this exact pattern. Women who were doing everything right, limiting fluids in the evening, avoiding caffeine, doing their pelvic floor exercises, and still waking up multiple times a night, still living with that undercurrent of anxiety, still feeling like their body was somehow working against them. And when I asked them whether anyone had ever talked to them about supporting the hormonal environment that their bladder actually depends on, the answer was almost always no. So I started looking for something that could help, something natural, something that worked at the level of the tissue that could support estrogen receptors in the pelvic structures without the risks and complications of hormone therapy. And what I found surprised even me. There are specific natural compounds, plants and roots that have been studied for their ability to interact with estrogen receptors in the body, to support tissue health, to calm nervous system reactivity, and to restore some of the regulatory function that hormonal decline disrupts. And when I began combining several of these compounds in a specific evening protocol, something I started calling a bedtime preparation, the results in my patients were remarkable. Not dramatic overnight changes, but consistent, progressive improvement. Women sleeping through the night for the first time in years. Women describing a softening of the urgency, a reduction in the anxiety, a return of the confidence they had stopped expecting to feel again. Let me tell you exactly what went into that preparation. The first ingredient is pumpkin seed extract. This is one of the most studied natural compounds for bladder support, and the research behind it is genuinely impressive. Pumpkin seeds contain specific compounds that support the tone of the pelvic floor muscles and help regulate the nerve signals that control the release of urine. In multiple clinical studies, women who took pumpkin seed extract consistently showed significant reductions in nighttime urgency and leakage episodes. But the mechanism is not just muscular. Pumpkin seed extract also appears to support the hormonal signaling environment around pelvic tissues, which is why its effects go beyond what simple muscle training can achieve. The second ingredient is soy isoflavones. Now, before you dismiss this because you have heard mixed things about soy, I want to clarify something important. Soy isoflavones are phytoestrogens, plant compounds that interact with estrogen receptors in the body in a gentle, selective way. They do not act like synthetic estrogen. They act as a soft signal to estrogen receptors in specific tissues, including the bladder lining and urethral tissue, helping those tissues maintain their health and responsiveness even as the body's own estrogen production declines. Research has shown that regular soy isoflavone supplementation is associated with measurable improvements in bladder control in postmenopausal women, and the effect becomes more pronounced over time as the tissues respond to consistent support. The third ingredient is valerian root. Most people know valerian for its calming effects on the nervous system, and this is exactly why it belongs in an evening bladder preparation. The bladder urgency that wakes women up at night is partly a muscular issue and partly a nervous system issue. When the nerves of the pelvic floor are in a state of chronic hyperreactivity, no amount of physical training will fully calm them. Valerian root helps shift the nervous system toward a state of parasympathetic balance, the rest and repair mode, which reduces the reactivity of the bladder's nerve signals during sleep and allows the body to actually rest without constant interruption. The fourth ingredient is magnesium glycinate. Magnesium is involved in over 300 enzymatic processes in the body, and one of its most important roles is in muscle and nerve regulation. Magnesium deficiency, which is extremely common in women over 40, is directly associated with increased bladder overactivity and muscle cramping. Magnesium glycinate, specifically, is the form most efficiently absorbed by the body and most effective at reaching the smooth muscle of the bladder wall. When taken in the evening, it supports the relaxation of the detrusor muscle, the main muscle of the bladder, reducing the involuntary contractions that cause urgency and nighttime waking. And the fifth ingredient is corn silk extract, one of the most underappreciated plant medicines for urinary health. Corn silk has been used for centuries in traditional medicine to soothe the lining of the urinary tract, reduce inflammation in the bladder wall, and support the health of the urethral tissue. When the bladder lining is irritated or inflamed, as it often becomes when estrogen declines and the tissue thins, even small amounts of urine can trigger a strong urgency signal. Corn silk helps calm that irritation from within, creating an environment where the bladder can hold more without reacting prematurely. These 5 ingredients, taken together in the evening as a consistent preparation, create a compound effect. Each one addresses a different layer of the problem. The muscles, the nerves, the lining, the hormonal receptors, the inflammatory environment. Together, they work in a way that no single ingredient can accomplish alone. And this is what I began recommending to women who had tried everything else. Women who had been told nothing more could be done. Women who had accepted fragmented sleep and limited freedom as their new normal. Now, I want to pause here because I know what you might be thinking. You are thinking about where to find these ingredients, about whether you can put this together yourself. And the honest answer is yes, you could try to source each of these individually. But here is what I need you to know, and this is important. The preparation I described is a starting point, a foundation. What I have seen produce the most consistent and lasting results, the kind of results that genuinely restore sleep and confidence and freedom, goes beyond these 5 ingredients. The link in the description below this video and in the first comment leads to something that has taken this concept significantly further, a formulation developed specifically for women in this hormonal transition, one that combines multiple targeted ingredients in the precise ratios that support the entire hormonal ecosystem, not just the bladder in isolation. Thousands of women who were exactly where you are right now have used it. Women who had tried the individual approaches, the exercises, the single supplements, the lifestyle adjustments, and who found that this combination was the thing that finally made a difference. The link is right below this video. I want you to go there after we finish. But first, let me tell you why acting now matters more than you might realize. There is a concept in hormonal health that I think about constantly when I work with women in their 40s and 50s. The responsive window, the period during which the body still retains significant capacity to respond to support. The tissues that have estrogen receptors can still be influenced. The nervous system can still recalibrate. The pelvic structures can still recover meaningful tone and resilience. But this window does not stay open indefinitely. The longer the tissues go without support, the more they adapt to that absence in ways that become increasingly fixed, thinning that becomes established, nerve patterns that become entrenched, structural changes that become harder to reverse. This is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to give you accurate information, because accurate information is the only foundation for a real decision. Every month of fragmented sleep is a month of cumulative exhaustion that compounds into something larger than fatigue. Every social situation navigated with that background anxiety costs something from your confidence, your ease, your presence in your own life. Every time you choose the seat near the exit, plan the outing around the restroom schedule, decline the invitation because the uncertainty feels like too much, something quiet but real is being taken from your quality of life. Not all at once, but steadily. And steadiness is what makes it easy to keep accepting, until one day you look back and the distance between who you are and who you want to be feels very wide. The women who acted while their bodies were still in the responsive window describe a quality of life that is genuinely different. Nights of uninterrupted sleep, the ease of a body that can be trusted, energy that comes from actually resting, the simple, profound freedom of not having to calculate and plan and manage every moment around something that should be invisible. That is what is available to you right now, while your body is still asking in a way that can be answered. The link below this video leads to the formulation that brings together everything I have described and more. A natural method that works at the level of hormones, nerves, muscle, and tissues simultaneously. Something built for women in exactly your situation. Women who are done accepting incomplete answers. Women who are ready to give their bodies the specific support they have been asking for. This is your moment. Not tomorrow. Not after you think about it. For another few weeks. Now, because the body that is asking for support today is more responsive than the body that has been waiting another 6 months. Go to the link in the description and in the first comment right now. Thousands of women have already taken that step. They were sitting exactly where you are sitting. They simply decided that their sleep, their confidence, and their freedom were worth acting on. I believe yours are too.